Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, I think we're getting to that point of the season where we can start peeking over the ledge and start thinking about the Chargers and football season. Well, we're almost into July now. Training camp just around the corner. That's what our topic's going to be about today. Pre-camp position grades for the Chargers roster. I think a lot of us still maybe drunk off of last season's offseason, right? Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, a lot of huge moves for the Chargers in 2022, but that doesn't mean that nothing happened in 2023 either. Chargers had some pretty nice movements in terms of additions, in terms of maybe trimming some of the fat. I think the biggest one of all, going out there and grabbing an offensive coordinator that does have some oomph behind his name there in Kellen Moore. The Chargers last season, in my opinion, they had a roster that they could have gone very deep into the postseason with, dare I say, maybe even the big game. And I would say largely in due part to maybe the coaching a little bit. Of course, injury did play a huge part in that. That just did not work out. This season, I think the Chargers still have a very impressive roster that, if led the right direction, should bring the Chargers a lot of success in 2023. So that's kind of what I want today's video to be about. Let's go ahead and take a look at the situation for the coaches and grade by position the Chargers roster to kind of see, are we in the same boat as last season? Is this maybe the last hurrah? Due to money, this unit may not be able to stay together next season, so it's vitally important that the Chargers try and get as much done this year as possible. Dare I say again, make a big push for the big game. You got all the pieces. I think you got the right coaching in place. It's time to make everything work out. So let's see what the coaches are working with our pre-camp position grades video. Before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to join the best fantasy platform on the web, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. It's a great way to support the channel and have some fun along the way. Before we kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. Your Chargers pre-camp position grades. Of course, training camp at the end of July. We are currently at the end of June. Chargers still do have a little bit of time if they wanted to make some additions and subtractions to the roster, but as of right now, I want to take a look at what the situation is for the Chargers, hand out some grades, maybe talk a little bit about each position and what we think their success is going to look like in 2023. So let's go ahead and get the big and obvious one out of the way. Quarterback Justin Herbert, backed up by Max Duggan and or Easton Stick. If you guys didn't know the situation for backup quarterbacks this season, it appears that you can roster 3 quarterbacks without having to use, all those positions out there. Basically having that emergency quarterback, that QB3 out there without having to declare them on game day, which is definitely something nice. Chargers are going to be rostering 3 quarterbacks. They've been doing it for the longest time. But this segment's more about Justin Herbert, right? Justin Herbert. A lot of people, there's been a lot of debate lately. I don't know if you guys have been, roaming around on Twitter or anything. A lot of debate if Justin Herbert's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Now, I'm not just a Chargers fan out here talking out my butt, okay? Even if I wasn't a Chargers fan, I think you have to make a pretty big argument against Justin Herbert not to place him in the top 5. Of course, me being a Chargers fan, I would argue top 3, but at very minimum top 5. And that is something, again, in the NFL, if you have yourself a franchise quarterback, if you got a guy that can lead your unit, he gives you as good a chance to win any game, any given Sunday, every single week. And the Chargers do happen to have one of those on the roster. Is he the best quarterback in the league? I won't go that far, but at the same time, you are very, very, very fortunate if you have a Justin Herbert at quarterback in the NFL. I would say top 3. Now, Justin Herbert this season, we talked a lot about situation for these players. I don't think there's any player on the roster that's benefiting more from the addition of Kellen Moore than Justin Herbert this season. The Chargers desperately needed a fresh look on offense. The Joe Lombardi dink and dunk underneath sort of stuff was just not getting the job done. It felt almost like a ludicrous misuse of a talent like Justin Herbert, when you got an arm like John Elway, you're not going to be asking him to dink and dunk all the way down the field. That's something I think more designed for a Tyrod Taylor, the man that was supposed to take the helm before Justin Herbert in that rookie season before everything went down. That's something that I feel like the Chargers stuck with, that they should have moved away from immediately when they found out what a Justin Herbert was capable of. Now we introduce a Kellen Moore who really does design offenses around the talent of their quarterback. I think that's a big reason why Dak Prescott has been so successful with the Dallas Cowboys for so many seasons. And now finally we get to see the same treatment for a guy like Justin Herbert. Again, big arm. He's got some mobility behind him. Great decision maker all around. I think you're going to see a much different version, yet familiar version of a Justin Herbert in 2023. I would say maybe a little bit more reminiscent of his rookie season where the Chargers still kind of figuring out what he could do. We're letting the man rip. And that's something I think Kellen Moore is going to be designing this entire offense around. How can we attack the deep part of the field, help out that run game a little bit, create some space. I think Justin Herbert's going to really go out there and kill it. So obviously we're going to give this man a grade of an A+, and the biggest beneficiary of the changes we've seen this season. Let's go ahead and move into the running back category, starring Austin Eckler for now, Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller. Now, if you guys haven't heard, you haven't watched any Chargers content the last 3 months or so, there is a situation revolving around Austin Eckler right now. And as we're all hearing, it seems to have been swept under the rug. Austin Eckler says no hard feelings. We're all good. He got himself a little bonus. But there was talk about him getting traded this offseason. Right now, of course, that ultimately did not come to fruition. The Chargers gave him a little nice bonus, I think, in the form of incentives, which is pretty nice. And I think Austin Eckler's going to go out there and really kill it this season. So for 2023, an isolated incident, I think we have a great situation at running back because of Austin Eckler. Okay, but beyond that, we're going to have to wait and see how that shakes out. If I were a betting man, I would say maybe Austin Eckler chases the money with another team in the offseason. I hope something works out where he can stay with the Chargers. Either way, that's Austin Eckler. He's definitely one of the best running backs in the entire league. Definitely the scoringest running back in the entire league. Chargers are definitely going to be putting him to use this season. Now, behind him, Josh Kelly, I think finally, after so many seasons, I think specifically of Austin Eckler asking, we've got a capable running back, too, behind an Austin Eckler. One that does, I would say, similar things in terms of receiving. We've seen a lot of really nice receptions by Josh Kelly, but also a nice, I would say, accent runner to an Austin Eckler, someone that brings a little bit more power. But again, he's definitely going out there and showing us that I feel good about the RB2 position, whereas before I really was not. He really has stepped up into that role. And then behind him, we have Isaiah Spiller. These two guys could become pretty important to the Chargers going forward. Again, depending on what happens with Austin Eckler, Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller, those could be the two guys at running back next season. But for right now, Chargers running back room looks very solid. The one criticism I would have is not having that power back to mix in there in those situations. Again, the off season, you still got time if you want to go out there and add one of those stud running backs that you just literally throw a rock, you'll find one that's being underpaid. So many free agent running backs with big names: Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, tons of guys out there looking for work, tons of guys out there that are going to have to take a one-year deal on a prove it or even, a very team-friendly deal. And I think the Chargers would be kind of wise to consider that at this point, just to have an accent to Austin Eckler, really complete what you can do on that offense, because perfecting, or I should say improving your run numerics are going to be very, very important this season. The Chargers, not very good in the ground game last season, are really going to have to improve that this season if they want a complete offense that can feature a Justin Herbert slinging it deep. You really can't do that unless you have a solid running game on the ground. And I do think the Chargers are close. Maybe even if they use the next man that we have on this list, Xander Horvath, as that power back, maybe the Chargers have that complete unit that we're looking for. But as of right now, I do think they're missing that element. So I'm going to give the running back grade a grade of a B+. Definitely not bad. You have one of the best running backs in the league when it comes to scoring. So Austin Eckler really does carry that for you. But I would like to see a little bit more completeness in terms of what you can do with that running back room, because it's going to have to show a lot of improvement this season. Really prove that the Kellen Moore effect is helping the Chargers numbers on the ground, because the Chargers were one of the worst teams last season in running numbers. We need to see that improve. We're seeing a very similar unit be rolled out there next season. We need to make sure that that does improve somehow. Next up, so B+ for the running back group. We will say fullback real quick. Definitely something I hope the Chargers do implement more of this season. Of course, fullback traditionally are going to help your running numbers a little bit. I think the Chargers have themselves a very unique fullback that can be involved in the passing game, that can be involved as a runner, snap it directly to him, try and churn out those tough yards. I think the Chargers, in terms of a player, have an A+. I think he's definitely one of the best fullbacks you're going to find in terms of physical intimidation and all that kind of stuff. He really does have the physical attributes that stand out among the rest of the league. But are the Chargers going to implement that? Are they going to use it? And are we going to see the true talent of a Xander Horvath? That's left to be seen. I'm just going to give Xander a B for now. If we can see a little bit more, if the Chargers do use him a little bit more, I think he could reach into the A's for sure. Next up, the messiest position on the Los Angeles Chargers going into 2023, the wide receiver group. And this is something that Chargers fans, myself included, were really pounding the table for during the draft, right? We need to get some speed on the team. We need to get some depth on the team. The Chargers last season going 5 deep at wide receiver for a majority of the season found themselves in some holes last year, right? With Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both going down. I think there was a tiny stint with Josh Palmer as well. It really felt like an unstable position, whereas now this season, the script has been flipped. The Chargers, take a look at their top 3, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston. Very impressive. Your very few teams are going to be boasting a trio this talented at the top of their depth chart at wide receiver. It's very impressive to see what the Chargers have assembled, at least for this season. Again, kind of like the Austin Eckler situation. It is maybe kind of temporary due to it, maybe a different situation with the wide receivers. Too much money at this position. $60 million between Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Towards the dead cap last year, I think, or next year. I think something's going to happen next year in terms of having to move that money around, maybe move on from a player. But what we alluded to in another video that kind of covered this was that magical season, right? We still have that magical season of 2023 where we have the band together, right? We still have the band together one more season. Let's go out there and put on a hell of an encore. I think we're going to see that this season, right? The Kellen Moore effect obviously is something that we're going to harp on the entire offense, but we can't talk about what we did with Justin Herbert unless the wide receivers are up to the task. And I think the Chargers do boast some of the best wide receiver talent in the NFL, some of the best quarterback talent in the NFL, and now one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. What does that allude to? What does that add up to? I think the Chargers are going to have one heck of a passing attack this season, and mainly due to the quarterback and wide receiver positions that are really going to be carrying that. Now, that's just the top 3. The reason I said Messi at the top of this position is because who's playing behind him, right? You got Josh Palmer, who I think is going to be a pretty big part of this offense going into the future. I don't know how much we're going to see of him this year because of how deep, this position group is, but Josh Palmer, very good player, right? When he stepped in lieu of an injured Keenan Allen last season, this guy really stepped up. He really did. Then we got a Darius Davis, right? 4th-round pick for the Chargers this season. Speedster. He's going to be our return guy. He's going to be our trick play guy, our gadget player out there. He's going to be awesome. I think a lot of people, myself included, maybe sleeping a little bit on Darius Davis. I think the Chargers got some plans for this guy. And then you got Jalen Guyton, who is returning from injury. It could be an injury that's maybe serious enough to push him off the roster now that there's so much talent going into wide receiver. Another guy, Pokey Wilson, behind him. A lot of Chargers fans seeing him ball out at OTAs and minicamp. There's a lot going on there. But at the top of the position group, though, where I think you're going to see the most impact is going to be from these top 3 guys. Allen, Williams, and Johnston. And these guys together, it's almost just the perfect complementary different styles of talent that you're seeing all over the roster. You got the jump ball, the possession guy in Mike Williams, the big play guy in Mike Williams. You got the Keenan Allen, the slicer and dicer, the slayer, going out there for first downs, really just putting, DBs on skates. And then you got Quentin Johnston, who's going to start spreading out the field a little bit, right? He's going to be stretching out what you can do deep as well as what you can do underneath. I think it's a big underrated part of his game, how good he is running routes in the short and intermediate parts of the field as well. So your wide receiver group is looking stupid talented right now. I'm going to give them a grade of an A going into the season. Of course, the only reason it's not an A+ in my opinion is because, yes, Quentin Johnston is a rookie, but at the same time, just even if it was just Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, it would at least be an A. So we'll have to wait and see how the Quentin Johnston factor comes out. I think it's going to be awesome. I think he's being put in a very good situation where you're going to have, opposing teams trying to cover Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Who's covering Quentin Johnston? that cornerback 3, that depth guy, that training camp guy. I think he's going to see a lot of opportunity this season. So wide receiver is going to have a solid A. I'm very close to A+, very close to A+ for me. Next up, let's talk about tight end a little bit. The Chargers, historically, of course, all you fans back in the day of Antonio Gates have really leaned on this position quite a bit. I feel like they haven't as much since the Hunter Henry days a little bit. We since then seen Jared Cook and now Gerald Everett, both of which very similar players. I would say almost exactly the same, except Gerald Everett much younger. Behind him, you got Don Parham and Trey McKitty. These guys, to me, I feel like are almost bookmark players a little bit, right? Because Gerald Everett, very solid. Same thing with Jared Cook the season before, very solid. But these aren't huge playmakers out there, right? These aren't, tight end ones in the league if you're drafting in fantasy football. These aren't the superstars out there. These are, the blue collar guys going out there, just kind of chipping away at yardage, providing options for their quarterbacks, and at the end of the season, providing a very stable stat line, right? I think Gerald Everett last season ended with something very, reasonable, and that's what I kind of feel like the tight end position has turned into for the Chargers the last couple of years, really putting the focus on the wide receiver and running back, and letting tight end be that complement. I think in the future we may see that change a little bit, but for right now, I think the tight end position, it's doing what it needs to do. It's providing what it needs to provide. I think it could use a little bit more in terms of, let's say, tight end that could definitely help in the run game a little bit more. I don't know if any of our guys are in particular very good at that, but all of them I would say are decent in receiving. Trey McKitty probably our best blocking guy as of right now, at least in the way that they're using him. Outside of that, the Chargers almost strictly receiving in terms of tight end. So I'm going to give the position group a C+. Definitely not bad. I think they're going to get the job done. Nothing spectacular, but it really does help push a majority of the snaps, a majority of the opportunity into the receiver position, which I think the Chargers have so much talent. You'd be wise to do that this season. All right, so tight end C+. And to round out the offense, we got the offensive line. We're actually going to list off the starters on this one. There's a lot of guys playing behind him. We got Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, Corey Linsley, Jamari Sawyer, and Trey Pipkins. Now, this may seem ludicrous to some people. I'll give you guys my grade right now. I'm going to give this unit an A-, okay? And let me explain myself. I know that the line isn't exactly perfect, right? I feel like Zion Johnson, very solid. Maybe still has a little bit to prove, right? I think last season was solid, especially for a rookie year. I think it left a little bit of room for improvement, which is fine, right? He was definitely not the worst part of that line last season. Trey Pipkins, who was a disaster for the Chargers for several seasons, stepped in last year, did a decent job, right? Nothing elite, nothing crazy good, but decent. And that's all you can really ask for at the right tackle position when the rest of the line looks the way it does, right? And that's what I'm trying to allude to. Raise your hand if you were a Chargers fan in the Phillip Rivers days. I know there's going to be a lot of you guys way before that as well. But in the Phillip Rivers days and when I was growing up watching the Chargers, very rarely did I see an offensive line that could keep that man upright. Very many years, a decade plus, right? I saw Phillip Rivers running for his life. It was very bad. It was very traumatic out there in terms of offensive line for the Chargers for a very long time. Now watching in the Justin Herbert era, how this offensive line has been rebuilt over the course, I'll say, of 4 years or so. It's quite impressive. This, to me as a fan, the last 2 years, is some of the best talent, the best unit, the best overall offensive line that I've seen as a Chargers fan. And when you look in comparison to the other offensive lines throughout the league, you got to look at the Chargers and say, man, this is a top 5 O-line in the NFL. And that is not something I'm used to saying as a Chargers fan, before the Justin Herbert era. So I'll tell you guys right now, this line, we are lucky to have them. Again, knock on wood, that they stay healthy. This is one of the best you're going to find in the league, and it's going to pay dividends, right? The Chargers, they can run behind this line. The Chargers, especially with Rashawn Slater coming back, that's a huge plus. They can throw. They can, buy themselves those precious few seconds to get a man open for Justin Herbert. This is going to be a big part of the season this year, guys. I hope that everybody can stay healthy, but the Chargers, that offensive line, that's a big reason why we see some success with the Justin Herbert. We see some success, hopefully, with the Kellen Moore this season, all right? Let's move into the defense. I don't know how long this one's going to take. Shouldn't be that bad. Let's start with the defensive line. Starring a Morgan Fox, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Austin Johnson. Now, last season, when the Chargers were assembling these dudes. You'll remember that the focus, at least in the topics of my video for the defensive line, was fixing the run, right? The Chargers' run defense was very putrid in 2021, and unfortunately for the Chargers, I will say it did not improve that much in 2022. It did improve, but not by much where we're all praising it, right? It definitely needs a lot more work. This season, the Chargers kind of electing to go with the same unit. It's going to take, I think the Chargers' talent in terms of defensive line is there. I think what you're seeing in terms of very poor run defense a lot of the times is the design of the defense, the scheme of the defense a little bit. Brandon Staley, the way he runs things, very Vic Fangio. If Vic Fangio's defense design has any flaws, it's usually in run defense, and that's something that you guys can go back and look with the Broncos, the Bears, and of course the Chargers now. I don't know how much of it I put on the players, but certainly if you have a guy, let's say like with the Rams and Aaron Donald, that can be that constant disruptor, it does mask that weakness of the system a little bit, right? The Chargers, in my opinion, don't have that guy. Of course, no one else has an Aaron Donald in the league, but it doesn't mean they don't offer something in this defense. Of course, Sebastian Joseph Day playing his butt off. He's one of my favorite, I would say, personalities on the team, but what he offers on the field, I think we would be in very big trouble if we didn't have Sebastian Joseph Day, right? If we had the next guy or the next guy. I think he does provide a lot of value at the position in terms of what he offers in stopping the run and adding a little bit of pass rush from the middle. You got Austin Johnson, who went down pretty early last season. He's definitely known for more of a run defense kind of guy. That's going to be something that really helps out the unit there. And then Morgan Fox, who the Chargers brought back this season because of how good he was at generating pressure from the interior. I think this is a very solid-looking group, guys, a very solid-looking group. And if the Chargers change their ways a little bit in terms of how they operate in run defense, I think you may see a little bit more of that this season with the linebackers they brought in, Kendricks and Henley. I feel like we can see a bit of an increase in terms of their run defense performance this season. But if anything, the Chargers got a really nice unit with Morgan Fox, especially in getting to the quarterback from the interior. So I'm going to give this group a B- for now. I need to see a little bit more in terms of run defense from this unit. It's the same unit as last season, but I can sure as heck count on them to help generate pressure from the interior, which is going to be something the Chargers are going to be leaning on a lot this season. Next up, let's move to Edge. All right, starring Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Chris Rumph. Again, spoiler alert, I'm giving this position group a grade of an A+. The only other A+ on this video outside of quarterback is at the edge position, and this is something that I think, again, NFL fans, Chargers fans, me, we all fall victim to short memories when it comes to players, right? I think you have 1 year to forget somebody, and then they're gone forever, right? I feel like we all sort of felt that with Joey Bosa a little bit. I look at the fandom a little bit. I see some things where people are not super, stoked on the Joey Bosa. Listen, I get it. He was injured. We had the hype with Khalil Mack and that pairing going into last season. We didn't get to see it. That's the whole point. We didn't get to see it. And I don't know if you guys have been Chargers fans, throughout the entirety of a Joey Bosa's career, but it feels like almost every time Joey Bosa gets injured and misses a significant amount of time, the next season he just goes bananas. And now we finally have the opposite edge rusher to really put that to use, right? This is exactly the same conversation as we had last year. Oh my God, what's this defense going to look like now that we got Khalil Mack opposite Joey Bosa? It's going to be absolutely crazy. Well, we get to see it this year, hopefully. Again, everybody stays healthy, knock on wood, hopefully. But that's why this position group gets an A+ for me. Look at these two guys coming off the edge. Two of the very best you're going to find in the entire NFL. Maybe one or two teams in the entire league post a better duo of edge rushers than the Chargers. We just need to see these guys play together. And now all of a sudden, the Chargers go out there and invest a second-round pick in Tuli Tuipulotu out of USC, and this guy's absolutely insane. You get to rotate this guy in all of a sudden. The Chargers edge rush, or the edge position, looking this solid, this consistently through every single game, this fresh because you got so much talent being rotated in and out. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited. I think the Chargers got themselves a very nice trio of edge rushers right now. I think Tuli can play either side. I think Bosa can play either side. I think Matt can play either side. I think got a very nice, chess pieces to work with on defense. I think the edge position is really going to shock some people. If these guys can stay healthy, the Chargers may be known defensively for these three guys. I would say these two guys and Derwin James, right? But this position, I would say, is going to be something that stands out for the Chargers if these guys can all stay healthy. That's why they're the only other A-plus position on this list. I need Chargers fans to remember how lethal a Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack healthy can look like in the regular season. That is going to be massive, and I really, really hope we get to see it this year because, guys, it would be something of beauty. All right, next up, let's move into the linebackers. Won't spend too much time on this one because we just don't know too much. The only thing we do know is the man behind him in Kenneth Murray, right? Kenneth Murray, let's name the top three guys. Eric Kendricks, Kenneth Murray, and then Daiyan Henley. All right, the only guy that we've seen a significant amount of snaps from for the Chargers has been Kenneth Murray. And that hasn't really led to a lot of confidence in the middle linebacker position for the Chargers. Definitely Chargers asking him to do too much in coverage, which he's definitely not good at, but he hasn't really stepped up in terms of improving that part of his game either. And that's something that is to be concerning a little bit. Outside of that, though, the Chargers bring in two guys that really do have a forte in that area. And in this evolving defensive-minded NFL, where you're asking these linebackers to do a lot, you really are. You're asking them to cover. You're asking them to blitz. You're asking them to defend the run. You're asking them to do pretty much everything. I would say more often than not, the thing that linebackers struggle with is coverage. And the Chargers just so happen to bring in two guys that are very good in coverage. Eric Kendricks built his legendary career behind his coverage skills, right? In Minnesota, that's really what you looked at him and thought, hey, this man, watch out. You know, if you're going to try and pass to the running back, you're going to try and pass to the tight end, look out for number 6. He's going to be out there. He's going to be defending, right? He could pick you off. And then the Chargers go out there and they also drafted Daiyan Henley, who this guy also one of the best, if not the best, coverage linebacker coming in from the draft this season. Probably one of the best rookies you'll find in pass coverage linebackers. This could change the position for the Chargers. And although I think they had a great guy last season in Drew Tranquil, one that I think the Chargers are going to maybe regret not bringing back, who was also very good in coverage, I think they brought in two guys that could really shape the future of the position. And I think that they are going to get what they want finally out of the position. They might have to move on from Kenneth Murray, unfortunately, but they need guys that can cover. And I think the two guys right now, if I'm looking at the depth chart, Kendricks, then Murray, then Henley. I think Murray may be pushed down a little bit. We're going to see a little bit more Henley, and the Chargers finally get that coverage ability they need from the middle linebacker position. So I'm going to give that position group a grade of a C+. I think until we see a little bit more, it's kind of, we'll wait and see. But I think the Chargers finally have the pieces in place. We just need to see it translate onto the defense. All right. Next up, let's go to the cornerback position. This is one of the position groups that I feel is severely underrated for the Chargers, even outside the fandom, right? I feel like, other fandoms, when I was talking to some of my buddies for fantasy football last year, we talk about everything. And yes, everything includes defenses a little bit. And some of my friends, not in my league, but in other leagues, asking for advice. Director, what do you think about drafting the Chargers defense? Is that worth, my second to last pick rather than my last pick? I would tell them, I think that's something last year. I was like, I think that has some potential. You look at the pass rush, you look at the cornerbacks. That is a mixture. That is a combination that honestly translates to turnovers more often than not. And turnovers are points in fantasy football. And I think the same thing applies this season. A lot has to do with the opportunity you're going to see from Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa coming off the edge, causing quarterbacks to scramble, causing quarterbacks to make bad decisions, rush decisions. You're going to see these DBs try and capitalize on that. Unfortunately for the Chargers, outside of a couple of guys, I think their DBs are all made up of players that are kind of known as playmakers, as ball hawks, guys that could go out there and pick off a loose ball. And I feel like the Chargers DB group right now, as it's composed, is one of the best you're going to find in the NFL under the radar. I think this is the most under the radar position for the Chargers right now. Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson, and again, a lot depends on what happens with him, and then Michael Davis. Okay, these three guys I think could be phenomenal. I think Asante Samuel Jr. is shaped out to be one of the best young corners in the league. I think Michael Davis, definitely one of those guys that has risen up from nothing into one of the better cornerbacks in the league, especially after struggling the first season in Brandon Staley's system. And then the same thing can be said for J.C. Jackson. Is J.C. Jackson's story going to be the same as Michael Davis? Boo, boo this man, boo, bench him. And then the next season he comes back, oh, okay, he figured it out. Man, he figured it out. This guy's real good. I think so. The big X factor for him is certainly going to be the injury. How is he going to come back from that? But outside of that, I think the Chargers DB unit Looks really, really nice. So much so, I'm teetering between a B+ and an A- for them. I think they could be very, very good at cornerback. I'm actually going to go ahead and give them the grade of an A-. I think Asante Samuel is great. I think Michael Davis has been great. And I'm going to give J.C. Jackson the benefit of the doubt. I've had a feeling in my gut that he's going to come back this season. He's going to make a real impact. I don't think he's going to be what we hoped he would be when we picked him up in free agency, but I think he's going to be very damn good. I think Chargers fans are going to be excited for 27 to step out into the field once again after a couple of weeks. Okay, so I'm going to give him an A-. I really do believe in that group, and it may be the one inflated grade I have in this entire video, maybe by a little bit, but that's me, right? This is my grade, and I think that this unit, this trio, could be something special. Take a look at safety real quick. Derwin James, Alohi Gilman. Derwin James, arguably a top 5 overall defensive player in the entire NFL. That's big. In my opinion, absolutely the best safety in the NFL. The chess piece that kind of helps this entire defense operate. I hate calling him this, you guys, I get it, but he's that queen piece of the chess set, right? He moves around everywhere. He's that piece that you really design your entire defensive system around. That's how special he is. And that he's going to carry a big part of that grade for the position here. The biggest question marks that we have are opposite of him. Last season, it was Nasir Adderley. He was okay, right? He didn't shape out to be what we were hoping, but he was okay. Now that he's gone, we're looking at what? An Alohi Gilman, Mark Webb, JT Woods, kind of left to be seen. And again, the Chargers have a little bit of time if they wanted to bring in a guy like John Johnson III, but we just don't know. But outside of that, Derwin James is such a big piece of this defense. I would say safety evolving to a very important position for this defense, because if he's moving around, who's back there all of a sudden? If Derwin's in the box, who's playing up top? Because we already know Alohi Gilman's going to be up there. Who else is up there? Is it Mark Webb? Is it JT? We have to wait and see. So right now, I'm going to give the position group, it's so hard. I'll say with Derwin James, I can't give it any less than an A because of how special he is. Outside of Derwin James, we'll say him removed. What does this position group look like? I would give it like a C-. We need to see more. We need to see more from the other guys. Okay? And then finally, to wrap up this video, special teams. It's a competition right now at kicker between Dicker and Hopkins. I think Dicker's going to win it, but we'll have to wait and see. Good problem to have if you're a Chargers fan. We had terrible kickers for so long. Now we got two of the better ones you'll find in the league fighting over the spot. It's a good position to be in. Instead, I'll show you guys a picture of J.K. Scott, who, again, under the radar special teamer. I think one of the best punters you're going to find in the entire NFL, right? I think he's going to be great. And then, of course, we got a brand new returner in Darius Davis. Have to wait and see how the rookie turns out, but he's been one of the best. He was one of the best returners you'll find in the draft this last season. I'm going to give the special teams unit a grade of a B+. Rounding out, I would say this entire thing, man, I didn't do the average. You guys help me out with the average if you have time. I'll say the average for me is like a B+, A- for the Chargers roster going into the season. I would say maybe closer to an A-. This roster looks good. It looks very, very good. From top to bottom, very few positions that I'm kind of worried about. Kind of, the situation we're going into the draft with, right? What are the Chargers' biggest needs? Not that many. Not that many. And if I'm being honest, this is, again, one of those other years where it's like we're going all in the sequel, right, in 2023. We've got the group here. What are we talking about in terms of receiver? We may not have this receiver group next season. We may not have Austin Eckler next season. Money may move a Khalil Mack off the roster at some point, right? This is the season. Again, if you guys are thinking like, oh man, last year was the all-in year, I think sneakily it's this season because money's going to change this team a lot in 2024. I really hope that the coaches are ready to take what they have on the roster right now and put it to work and make it work and bring the most success possible you can with this unit while you can. Because now it's time to pay the piper, aka Justin Herbert. And all these big contracts, they're not all going to fit anymore. This is the season to make the magic happen. Let's make the magic happen. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you guys have made it this far, I just wanted to say real quick, too, if you guys didn't see my Twitter, I just wanted to give a shout out to my grandma who passed away this last weekend. Heck of a lady. If you guys want to go take a look at the Twitter post there. Just want to dedicate this video and honestly all my success in anything that I've ever been good at. Thank you to my grandma with her infectious personality and her ability to step in and help take care of me and my younger brother from a single parent home. One of the most special people in my life, and I'm going to miss her very, very much. So thank you to Grandma Coco for everything that she brought me and my family. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll catch you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty.